On August 31st, the Echenike family were taking their 8-year-old son Levi to school when a driver smashed into the side of their car.
Drunk drivers reacting to life sentences. Have you ever wondered how drunk drivers react when they are sentenced to life in prison? You won't believe the spectrum of emotions and reactions these people display when confronted with such terrible consequences for their misdeeds.
I cannot tell you today that I am a Christian without flinching in disgust at what God has done to me.
So, get ready for an emotional roller coaster as we look at their responses and try to figure out what their decisions mean.
He has expressed his complete contempt for himself, has stated how much he regrets the accident and would do anything to be able to change places with the victims.
This is a tragic case involving Todd Grudzinski, a man with a history of drunk driving convictions. Despite being ordered by a judge not to drink due to a previous domestic violence case, he allegedly drove drunk again and caused a fatal accident.
The second I knew what I did, the second I knew I was in an accident, I was remorseful. I reached out to a chaplain at the hospital immediately. I've expressed my remorse the entire time. I do not feel that I am a victim. The victim has passed away because of my ignorance, and I am so truly sorry to the family.
On September 30th, Grudzinski was reportedly driving his GMC pickup truck at high speeds, recklessly weaving in and out of lanes on a bike path. He slammed into the back of a car driven by 25-year-old victim Missy Wimmer while she was stopped at a red light on West Colfax Avenue. The impact propelled her car into the path of 3 other vehicles, resulting in a devastating 5-car accident. Tragically, Missy Wimmer lost her life in the crash. Grudzinski is now facing a long list of charges including vehicular homicide, breaking a protection order, and driving under the influence. After the accident, Grudzinski denied being drunk and claimed he hadn't consumed alcohol since the day before.
Well, I am never going to drink again, and I will never let this moment right now fade. I will dedicate my life behind walls to helping others to never take a drink, to never drink and drive.
However, traffic cameras revealed that he had been at a bar called Misfit Sports Bar and Grill shortly before the collision. During his sentencing, Grudzinski expressed remorse and apologized to the Wimmer family. He acknowledged the severe consequences of his actions and how they had forever impacted the victims' loved ones.
And I just apologize first and foremost to the Wimmer family. I pray daily.
Despite his apology, the pain and loss caused by his actions cannot be undone. Grudzinski now faces a life sentence in prison for his actions, reflecting the severity of his repeated drunk driving offenses and the devastating consequences of his latest act. This case serves as a tragic reminder of the dangers of drunk driving and the need for stricter measures to prevent repeat offenders from putting innocent lives at risk.
A Fort Pierce man was sentenced to 72 years in prison today for a fiery crash that killed 5 people in 2018.
In 2018, Tanner Dashner found himself in a horrific situation after driving impaired and causing a devastating crash that claimed the lives of 5 people. After a 2-day hearing, Senior Circuit Judge Robert Mackimson delivered a sentence of more than 70 years behind bars for Dashner, deeming it an exceptional case. The tragedy occurred on November 23, 2018, when Dashner, then 21, was recklessly driving at 97 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone on South 25th Street.
Investigators say Tanner Dashner was drunk and driving more than 90 miles an hour when he rear-ended a pickup truck, causing it to burst into flames.
He crashed into the back of a Dodge Dakota and a BMW that were stopped at a red light on Midway Road. The impact ignited a fire in the Dodge, along with its passengers, Keaton Tillett, Alexis Cheney, Anthony Victor, Anthony Martin, and Darian Douglas all lost their lives. A bystander managed to rescue Ariana Stanberry, who was only 14 at the time, from the burning truck. Florida Highway Patrol investigators later discovered that Dashner's blood alcohol content was a staggering 0.274%, more than 3 times the legal limit. During the sentencing, Judge Mackinson announced that Dashner would serve 14.5 years for each of the 5 DUI manslaughter charges, totaling 72.5 years, with credit for nearly 1,300 days already served. The judge also considered 2 lesser misdemeanor charges. While Assistant State Attorney Brandon White believed Dashner deserved life imprisonment, Mackinson's sentence was in line with White's request, despite striking 5 additional vehicular homicide charges. The impact of the crash on the victims' families was profound. Susan Brooks, who lost her nephew Anthony Martin, expressed relief and closure outside the courthouse, emphasizing the importance of forgiveness despite the consequences.
Closure. We're just ready to move on, put this behind us. He'll never be forgotten, so we just have to be strong, and we've been through a great deal, all of us, and so we're just ready to put this past us.
Dashner's attorney, Ashley Minton, argued for a reduced sentence, citing evidence of autism spectrum disorder, traumatic brain injury, and other brain issues. However, the court didn't find the evidence compelling enough to warrant a lighter punishment. During the hearing, several relatives of the deceased provided emotional testimonies about their losses and the ongoing pain they experienced. Leslie Douglas, the father of one of the victims, described the overwhelming grief of losing a son, while Hydia Anderson, sister of Alexis Cheney, explained how the loss had deeply affected her and her children. Dashner himself addressed the courtroom, expressing regret for his poor decisions and the devastation caused by the accident. He hoped for closure and the eventual forgiveness of those affected by his actions.
I never intended to hurt anyone in my life. I regret the poor decisions I've made, and am sorry to all the families that I have devastated because of this terrible accident. I hope that you will receive some closure today, and that one day that you can forgive me.
In July 2018, a tragic accident on US 301 in Briceville, Florida, claimed the lives of 21-year-old Ryan Chase Kennedy, his 22-year-old fiancée Bailey Christine McKnight, and their unborn son. The devastating crash was caused by 48-year-old Sean Lee Blitchington, who was driving under the influence. Recently, Circuit Court Judge James Daniels sentenced Blitchington to 60 years in Florida State Prison for his actions. This sentence could essentially mean a life sentence for Blitchington, as he won't be eligible for parole until after 50 years. During the sentencing, family and friends of the victims shared their heart-wrenching statements. Ryan Kennedy's father, Raymond Kennedy, submitted a letter expressing his overwhelming heartache and how he still grieves for the future that was lost that day. Susie Kennedy, Ryan's mother, described the night of the accident as the worst day of her life, since she lost her son on his 21st birthday, along with Bailey McKnight, who was 8 months pregnant with their son, Lawson Kai Kennedy.
Gotten rid of all of my necklaces because this is the only thing that I can wear, because it is his thumbprint, and it makes me feel safe, and it makes me feel close to him. It makes me think about him every day.
But he needed to hear it. He needed to hear what he's taken away.
According to the Florida Highway Patrol, Blitchington was driving the wrong way without headlights when he crashed head-on into the young couple's compact Honda Civic. Despite a witness trying to stop him from fleeing the scene, Blitchington escaped before being arrested later. Blitchington was found guilty on 3 DUI manslaughter charges, as well as leaving the scene of a crash involving death and driving on a revoked driver's license. Misty Clark McKnight, Bailey's mother, spoke about meeting her future grandson Lawson only in death, and our surviving grandson Hagen still struggles with the loss of his mother. She emphasized the ongoing pain and complex grief that has affected their lives and the lives of those who knew Ryan and Bailey. In court, a friend of Misty's asked the judge to consider the irreparable injury caused by Blitchington's actions and argued against him being a danger to society again. Blitchington's previous court records revealed a history of drunk driving offenses in both Baker and Nassau counties, including DUI-related charges and driving with a suspended license. His past behavior demonstrated a disregard for the law and public safety. Upon delivering the sentence, Judge Daniel addressed Blitchington directly, stating that his decision to drink excessively and then drive had catastrophic consequences for everyone who loved the victims. Blitchington's family and friends reacted with gasps and tears upon hearing the verdict.
And a grieving father opens up about the crash that killed his 3-year-old son and the warning signs from the woman police say was responsible.
In Detroit, a tragic incident occurred on 7 Mile Road that has left the community in shock and mourning. Charlacia Pelt, a woman accused of driving drunk, was involved in a wrong-way crash that resulted in the death of her 3-year-old son, Michael Jones, and injuries to her 3-month-old and 8-year-old daughters.
Get to the hospital to see my baby laid out with tire marks on his arms, on his face. When I threatened to take my son to Mrs. Pelt several times, she cried and told me that her baby mean the world to her.
Pelt was arraigned on charges of reckless driving causing death, 3 counts of second-degree child abuse, and 3 counts of operating while intoxicated. Occupant. A memorial for young Michael has been set up at the intersection of 7 Mile Road and Hay Street, and emotions are running high among residents who are struggling to come to terms with what happened. According to witnesses and video evidence, Pelt was speeding on 7 Mile Road, going in the wrong direction, and was allegedly using her cell phone while driving. She passed by a Detroit police officer before the collision occurred at Hay Street. During the crash, Michael, who was in a car seat, was ejected from the vehicle, and tragically his mother's van ran over him. Witnesses reported that the minivan was traveling at a high speed, estimated to be around 70 to 80 miles per hour. The situation was traumatic for everyone involved, including the police officers who responded to the scene. Pelt was taken into custody on suspicion of drunken driving, and witnesses expressed their anger and disbelief that she would endanger her children's lives in this way.
I want to apologize to my family. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I promise I didn't mean it. Y'all know I love my baby so much. I'm sorry everything I've ever put y'all through.
Family members revealed that Pelt has been going through difficult times, including struggles with depression. She was apparently on her way to take the children to her sister's home so she could have a night out when the tragedy occurred. As the family mourns the loss of young Michael, they're also trying to support Pelt, acknowledging the difficulties she has been facing. The 3-month-old and 8-year-old daughters are expected to recover physically, but the 8-year-old is understandably devastated by the loss of her brother.
The sentence will be 3 to 15 years in the State Department of Corrections on the OWI causing death, 3 to 10 years on the child abuse second degree. You have credit for 13 days. Those 2 sentences will run concurrently. They'll run at the same time.
The incident has left the community shaken, grappling with the devastating consequences of driving under the influence and the heartbreak of losing a young life.
We are learning more about the woman who police say is responsible for a horrific, deadly hit and run on the Selman Crosstown Expressway. That fiery crash shut down the Selman in South Tampa for 10 hours. Avery Cotton is at the Falkenberg jail where that driver is behind bars this morning.
A catastrophic crash that occurred on the Selman Expressway in 2017 resulted in irrevocable life changes for a number of people in the Tampa Bay neighborhood. Amber Pereira, the protagonist of this tragic story, found herself caught up in a nightmare chain reaction that ultimately resulted in the deaths of 3 members of the Felipak family. According to the findings of the investigation, Pereira was allegedly drunk at the time that the collision took place. She was driving erratically along the highway when she collided with the vehicle driven by Luis Felipak, setting off a devastating chain reaction. The force of the impact hurled their vehicle onto the westbound lanes, where it collided with 2 other vehicles and caught fire before being completely consumed by the blaze. Pereira proceeded to drive through the mayhem to the point where her damaged vehicle was no longer able to support her, which ultimately led to her being detained. Pereira entered a guilty plea to driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, while at the same time attempting to justify her behavior by stating that she had a seizure. However, she was then charged with a litany of violations, including DUI manslaughter, DUI with substantial bodily harm, fleeing the scene of a fatal collision, and evidence destruction. These charges came after she was accused of driving under the influence and causing the death of another person. After further investigation, the authorities found out that she had been driving at excessive speeds of over 100 miles per hour and that she had cannabis-related substances in her system. It was impossible for Pereira to hold back her tears as the court sentenced her to life in prison. Circuit Judge Christopher Sobrella made a profound reference to a jail discussion that was caught on camera, in which Pereira showed regret but failed to appreciate the gravity of the situation she had put herself in. The judge stressed the tremendous loss that was inflicted by her imprudent decisions, which resulted in the deaths of 3 innocent people.
Your life is ruined, but you also ruined a lot of lives and ended 3 lives.
The attorney representing Pereira made an impassioned argument for her client's release, pointing out that she had a minor criminal record and had no malicious intent toward anybody else. In spite of her passionate plea, the judges handed down a sentence of 50 years in jail, holding her firmly accountable for the destruction she had caused. The tragedy of Amber Pereira serves as a sharp reminder of the repercussions of driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs and the long-lasting pain that is left in its wake. As we think upon the lives that were taken from us, we are reminded of the irreplaceable value of human life, the significance of responsibility, and the importance of empathy.
Emotional hearing: a 23-year-old woman was sentenced after admitting to driving drunk in a deadly Newport Beach crash.
That crash killed a Santa Ana couple and left their 3 young girls orphaned and hospitalized.
A terrible event took place amidst the sparkling glow of Christmas lights, and it would leave an indelible mark on the lives of 2 families for all time. Grace Elizabeth Coleman, a woman from California who was 23 years old at the time, was forced to deal with the aftermath of an intoxicated hit-and-run accident that resulted in the deaths of a young wife and their 3 darling daughters. The amount of suffering and destruction that it caused in its wake was unfathomable. In front of the judge, Coleman courageously admitted that she was responsible for the full extent of her disastrous conduct. She entered a guilty plea for the charge that she was responsible for the deaths of Henry Eduardo Salina Mejia, age 27, and Gabriela Andante, age 28. The couple's kids, both of whom sustained life-threatening injuries in the accident, were also left to deal with the fallout of the horrific occurrence on their own. The horrifying reality was brought to light by the Santa Ana Police Department. Coleman's blood alcohol level was an astounding 0.22%, which is nearly 3 times the legal limit, when she crashed into the Nissan Versa that belonged to the family. Coleman's irresponsible decisions caused an unthinkable accident just as the young family was getting close to Pelican Hills, and it changed their life in an irrevocable way. As the judge announced the punishment, there was a lot of tension and passion in the courtroom. Coleman, who was disguised by a mask that concealed her expressions, sat there and listened as 2 of the orphan daughters read letters to their late parents that were filled with emotion.
2 of the girls, ages 7 and 5, wrote letters with drawings, read aloud in the courtroom.
My name is Emma Sofia. I write this letter because I miss my mom. My name is Elena. I miss my mom and my dad. I feel sad when the accident happened.
The attorney for the family said that it was one of the most emotionally charged scenes he has ever seen in his career. Coleman expressed regret despite the seriousness of the situation when she attended the private meeting that had been planned with Henry and Gabriella's families. Her tears were a clear indication that she understood the weight of the horrible mistake that she had made. Even though the relatives of the victims decided not to hold any animosity toward Coleman or her parents, James and Kelly Coleman of Newport Beach, they nevertheless chose to pursue a negligence claim against Coleman. According to the allegations made in the lawsuit, Coleman's parents gave their permission for her to keep driving the 2010 Land Rover, despite the fact that she had 2 previous instances involving drunk driving. This heartbreaking and tragic story is a sobering reminder of the irreversible repercussions that come from driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. The tragic events that occurred and the lives that were lost serve as a clear warning to all of us, imploring us to make responsible decisions and put our own safety and the safety of those around us first. When we think back on this tragic event, we are reminded of the everlasting significance of accountability and compassion in a society where decisions have the potential to change people's lives for the rest of their life. Thanks for joining. If you found this video as compelling as we did, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel.